Imagine turning on the TV one afternoon, flipping past the usual noise, and suddenly realizing, wait a second, where did she go? The voice you'd gotten used to, the calm but commanding presence, the woman who never seemed rattled, even when the conversation around her was on fire. That question, what really happened to Harris Faulkner from Fox News, didn't come out of nowhere. It came from viewers who noticed subtle changes. Shifts in tone, schedule shakeups, and a media landscape that never stays still for long. So let's talk about it. Not the clickbait version, not the whisper network rumors, but the real story, the human one, about Harris Faulkner. Her rise, the pressure cooker she's lived in for years. And why people keep asking what happened when, in many ways. She never actually left. Harris Faulkner didn't just stumble into television fame. Her career was built brick by brick, long before the bright Fox News lights. She came up the hard way, working local news, learning how to report when nobody knew her name and nobody cared about her opinions. Those early years matter because they shape the broadcaster people see today, disciplined, posed, and unshakably professional. This wasn't someone chasing viral moments. This was someone trained to survive chaos and still deliver the news. When she eventually landed at Fox News, she quickly stood out. Not because she was loud, not because she was outrageous, but because she was controlled in an environment that thrives on confrontation and sharp edges. Harris brought something different, a kind of grounded authority. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need to dominate. She commanded attention simply by being steady, and for a long time, it worked really well. She became one of the most recognizable faces on the network, anchoring major daytime slots and co-hosting shows that pulled in millions of viewers. Awards followed, respect followed, and behind the scenes, expectations followed to the kind that never let up. But here's where the story starts to get complicated. Cable news isn't just about what? Journalism anymore. It's about branding, ratings, algorithms, and audience moods that can change overnight. 1 minute a show is hot. The next minute, executives are reshuffling time slots, experimenting with formats, and chasing a different kind of energy. When viewers noticed Harris Faulkner moving between roles, adjusting her on-air presence, or not appearing where they expected her, speculation kicked in fast. Did she get pushed out? Was she sidelined? Did she say something she shouldn't have? Was there tension behind the scenes? The internet, as always, had theories. Lots of them. Most weren't true. The reality is far less dramatic, but way more revealing. Harris Faulkner didn't disappear. She adapted. At one point, she stepped into hosting her own show, a move that came with both opportunity and risk. Hosting solo means the spotlight is entirely on you. Every word, every pause, every facial expression becomes a talking point. And when you're a woman, especially a woman of color in cable news, that microscope is even sharper. Mistakes that would be brushed off for others can become headline material for you. And she made it clear, over and over, that she was not interested in becoming a caricature. She wasn't going to trade credibility for clicks. That choice matters, because in modern media, it can cost you momentum. There were also moments when Harris found herself in the middle of cultural conversations she didn't ask for but couldn't avoid. Comments taken out of context. Segments that sparked backlash online. Lawsuits that grabbed headlines, like her very public legal dispute with Starbucks over the use of her name. A case that some people mocked. Others defended, and almost everyone misunderstood. Regardless of where you stood, one thing was obvious. She was suddenly being talked about more as a personality than a journalist. That shift can be exhausting behind the polished delivery and perfectly timed commercial breaks is a human being managing real pressure, long hours, constant scrutiny, social media outrage cycles that never sleep, and the unspoken demand to always be on, even when life off camera doesn't cooperate. It's worth pausing here, because this is the part most people forget. Television doesn't show burnout. It doesn't show the moments when someone sits in their car before work, takes a deep breath, and prepares to walk into a storm they didn't create. It doesn't show the internal debates about how much of yourself you're willing to give to a machine that always wants more. And it definitely doesn't show the quiet decisions. The ones where someone chooses longevity over noise. Harris Faulkner made those choices. Rather than chasing controversy, she leaned harder into structure. Rather than reinventing herself every 6 months to please critics, she doubled down on what she knew how to do best: anchor, moderate, and keep control of the room. That may not generate viral clips every night, but it builds trust. And trust lasts longer than outrage. So why do people still ask what really happened? Because in today's media culture, staying steady looks like disappearing. When someone doesn't implode publicly, doesn't rage quit, doesn't spiral on social media, and doesn't fuel gossip, audiences assume something must be wrong. Silence gets mistaken for scandal. Consistency gets mistaken for decline. But if you look closely, Harris Faulkner's career tells a different story. She remained on air. She continued hosting. She maintained a central role in Fox News daytime programming. The changes viewers noticed were less about punishment or failure and more about strategy, both hers and the network's. Television evolves constantly, and those who last are the ones who know when to pivot without losing themselves. There's also a deeper layer here, one that rarely gets said out loud. Being a woman in political media means walking a tightrope every single day. Be too soft and you're dismissed. Be too tough and you're attacked. Be emotional and you're unstable. Be calm and you're cold. Harris Faulkner has spent years balancing those contradictions in front of millions of people and doing it with a level of composure that doesn't always get the credit it deserves. And maybe that's the real answer to what happened. Nothing explosive, nothing scandalous, nothing that fits neatly into a thumbnail with red arrows and shocked faces. What happened is that Harris Faulkner chose endurance over spectacle. She chose professionalism over performance art. She chose to stay in the game without letting the game consume her. In an industry that chews people up and spits them out for entertainment. That's actually kind of radical. So the next time you hear someone ask what really happened to Harris Faulkner, remember this. Sometimes the most interesting story isn't about a fall from grace. Sometimes it's about someone who refused to fall at all, even when the ground beneath them kept shifting. And in today's media world, that might be the most surprising plot twist of all. What often gets overlooked in conversations about Harris Faulkner is how rare her kind of longevity actually is. Cable news is ruthless. Faces rotate in and out constantly. One bad ratings quarter, one poorly received segment, one viral misstep, and suddenly someone who was everywhere just isn't. Viewers are conditioned to expect dramatic exits, public meltdowns, or explosive tell-all interviews. Harris Faulkner gave none of that. And that, ironically, is what made people suspicious. But behind the scenes, something else was happening. As Fox News continued evolving its programming, the pressure on anchors increased. Shows weren't just about delivering information anymore. They were expected to drive conversation online, trend on social media, and spark reaction. That's not the environment Harris Faulkner was trained in. Her strength has always been control, clarity, and credibility, not chaos. While others leaned into outrage culture, she leaned into restraint. That restraint didn't always play well in the algorithm era. Clips that go viral tend to be loud, messy, and extreme. Harris didn't play that game. And when you don't play, people assume you've been benched. Another layer most viewers never see is how deeply personal the cost of visibility can be. Harris has spoken before about faith, family, and values, things that anchor her identity beyond television. That grounding matters because when your entire career depends on public perception, it's easy to lose yourself chasing approval. Many do. She did single quotes. Instead, she set boundaries. Not dramatic ones, quiet ones. The kind that don't trend but protect your sanity. There were moments when she faced Criticism from multiple sides at once. Too conservative for some, not conservative enough for others. That's a lonely place to stand. It's also where moderation lives. And moderation in polarized media often gets punished simply for existing. Still, she stayed. She showed up day after day, steady as ever, while the conversation around her kept shifting. New hosts arrived. New controversies exploded. New media stars flamed out just as quickly as they rose. Through all of it, Harris Faulkner remained recognizable, not because she reinvented herself, but because she didn't, and maybe that's why the question keeps coming back. People aren't really asking what happened to Harris Faulkner. They're asking why she didn't. Self-destruct. Why she didn't chase. Clout. Why she didn't turn herself into a headline. Why she didn't burn bridges for attention. In a media culture addicted to spectacle, someone who survives quietly feels like a mystery. But here's the truth, hiding in plain sight. Harris Faulkner represents a version of success that doesn't scream. A career that's built on discipline, patience, and knowing when to speak and when not to. She didn't vanish. She didn't fall off. She simply refused to become noise, and that might be the most powerful move of all. So, when viewers flip through channels and pause on her familiar presence, maybe the better question isn't what really happened to Harris Faulkner. Maybe it's this: how did she last when so many others didn't? One of the most misunderstood parts of her journey is the idea that visibility equals power. On cable news, that's not always true. Sometimes the most visible people burn the fastest. Harris learned early that staying relevant doesn't mean staying loud. It means staying trusted. And trust is slow to build, but incredibly hard to replace. There were moments when industry insiders quietly speculated about her future. Not because she was failing, but because she wasn't fitting neatly into the newest trend. Media companies love reinvention. They love buzzwords. They love personalities that spark instant reaction. Harris Faulkner, on the other hand, represents something more old school. A reminder of when news anchors were expected to guide conversations, not hijack them. That difference matters. It's also why her presence sometimes feels almost out of place in today's media environment. She isn't chasing shock value. She isn't trying to be a meme. She's trying to be consistent. And consistency, while comforting to viewers, doesn't always excite executives obsessed with growth charts and engagement metrics. Yet, despite all of that, she endured. Another factor rarely discussed is how much strength it takes to stay composed while being constantly misinterpreted. Harris has often found her words reframed, clipped, or simplified to fit narratives she didn't create. In the age of social media, nuance dies fast. A single sentence can travel without context, stripped of tone and intention, and suddenly define a person in the public imagination. Most people respond to that by overcorrecting. They explain. They defend. They lash out. Harris Faulkner mostly didn't. That silence wasn't weakness. It was control. She understood something many don't, responding to every criticism hands power to people who don't deserve it. By refusing to engage in endless back and forths, she protected both her credibility and her peace. That decision may have made her seem distant to some viewers, but it also kept her grounded in a profession that thrives on emotional exhaustion. And then there's the reality of representation. Being one of the most prominent Black women in cable news comes with expectations that are never written down but always enforced. You're expected to represent more than yourself, to be perfect, to never slip, to absorb criticism with grace and never show frustration. Harris carried that weight on camera for years, often without acknowledgement. Every calm response, every measured pause, every moment of professionalism under pressure was a calculated act of survival. That's not something you notice in a quick clip. It's something you recognize over time. As years passed, the media conversation shifted again. New faces emerged. New controversies dominated headlines. And slowly, Harris Faulkner became something rare in modern television, a constant. Not flashy, not chaotic, just there, Reliable, familiar, and familiarity, oddly enough, can make people stop noticing the work being done. So when viewers ask what happened to her, what they're often reacting to is the absence of drama. No explosive exit. No public feud. No viral collapse. Just a woman doing her job day after day. Without turning herself into a spectacle, that's not a scandal. That's discipline in a world that rewards extremes. Harris Faulkner chose balance. In an industry that profits from outrage, she chose restraint. And in a culture obsessed with instant gratification, she chose longevity. That choice didn't make her trend every tanny. If you're using like a trend every week, it didn't make her untouchable. But it did make her durable. And durability might be the most underrated success story in Hollywood-adjacent media. So the next time someone asks, what really happened to Harris Faulkner from Fox News? Maybe the real answer is simpler than expected. She stayed, she adapted, she endured, and sometimes the most powerful story isn't about what went wrong. It's about what quietly went right. Disclaimer: the content in this video is based on publicly available information, media sources, and opinions. It is created for entertainment and educational purposes only. We do not claim or guarantee that every detail is 100% accurate.